We we have a free office hour that's available for our paid students. This one tomorrow is booked, and but it's a max of 5, and that's free beyond the class. So if you go to where you book the class, Johnny, you can see that office hour. And the next one I put up, as soon as it gets full, I put up another one. And the second one has 2 folks in it so far. You also can override the cap on the live stream that we do have for our Tuesday live stream. So Johnny, we do a live stream 5 to 6, and then we take a 15-minute break and we do an overtime session. Not every Tuesday. We didn't do it last Tuesday, but we are going to do it this Tuesday, and that's booked. And if you're a paid alumni, I will manually, put you in there so you can do that, even if you, for some reason, forget to book that. So that's one of the advantages of the paid class. You also get free repeats. Next time you see margin on the schedule, you can repeat that at no charge. Now, this evening margin class is kind of interesting and different because there's only 3 or 4 margin questions, but it seems to be something that gives people a problem. And, you want to be confident. And so, I got a little tired of people who are spending big money on tutoring to be able to solve margin practice questions that they're never going to encounter on the actual exam. But if you can turn it into a strength and you're feeling confident, that is certainly, I think, worthwhile. So there's only 3 or 4. Unfortunately, we don't know what those 3 or 4 are going to be. So we're going to have to do, more work than is necessary for those. Good evening, Cynthia. And just see Erica's joining us. I always think my dad's a missionary. So every time I see Erica show up with the Bible and the globe, I think of my dad, all the crazy places he goes sharing the good news. And I ask him sometimes, I say, Dad, I don't really think they're interested in the good news in this place right now. Anyway, so that's kind of the point of the class. And so we're going to do, I've been kind of on the guesstimate of the timing on these classes. I've also been a little off because I do these lectures as part of a 4-day Series 7 cram course, and not in the evenings when I've made the modules. So it looks like I put some of these up for an hour. It ends up coming at a little over. Whatever it is, it is. And then when, like I say, I'll adjust for the next sequence what the timing should be. All right, so any questions before we get started? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, no, maybe. So tonight we're going to be talking about margin, extension of credit in the securities industry. So, there are 2 major pieces of securities legislation. They are 33 and 34. And I don't know if you remember who was president back then. As an old dude, I'll share with you who it was. It was President Roosevelt. And all of his legislation was called the New Deal. That's kind of a hint that the old deal sucked. And President Roosevelt said, you guys and gals, well, mostly guys at that point, in the securities industry will thank me later, because even though you're fighting this legislation, it's going to promote public confidence in the securities industry. 33 and 34 were companion pieces of legislation. And 33 said, if you're going to sell brand new securities, that's huge. What kind of securities? Brand new. To the public. To whom? The public. You have to make a registration statement. And every once in a while somebody will say, well, gee, Dan, how could you make a registration statement with the SEC when it didn't exist? I said, well, they knew it was coming, right? Because that's 34. Sometimes you can get questions right by just covering up the screen and saying, are they asking about paper prospectuses, 33, or people and places, 34? Now, it's not a coincidence that most of this legislation, any act, has a story behind it. And the story here was the Roaring 20s. At the end of the Roaring 20s, there was a crash. And we decided that maybe broker dealers aren't the best decision makers about a credit extension to customers. Because when we were in charge, you only had to give me 10%. Wow, you give me 10 grand, I loan you 90 grand to purchase securities. Woohoo! And I'd lend you money to buy anything. And in 34, we said, you know what? Maybe we should give that to someone else. And so our first test question this evening is credit extension from broker dealers to customers is governed by Reg T, and that is a part of 34. So the Federal Reserve Board is the one who's in charge of saying how much the customer has to be initially at risk for, which we'll find out here in a little bit, is 50%. The Federal Reserve Board says broker dealers can't extend credit on new issues. It defines what that is. The Federal Reserve Board says broker dealers got to give customers 2 additional days to come up with money or securities. So those are all the things that we're going to be talking about. And that is our first test question. Now, a margin means money required for the transaction. And a lot of people get hung up on this as well. So, after you do the trade, there's a flow of what happens to a trade. At a brokerage firm that does its own clearing, we have an order department. The order department transmits the order to the market center for execution. Then the order goes to the purchase and sales department. And the purchase and sales department generates the confirmations, matches the trades. And then it goes to the margin department, who determines whether money or securities are due. And that's even in a cash account. To do basic types of accounts we have are cash accounts where you intend to pay in full or must pay in full, depending on what kind of account it is, and margin accounts where you're going to pay part of the purchase price and the broker dealer is going to lend you some of the balance. Now, again, customers get confused about this because I call you and you buy 1,000 shares of 40 in your cash account. As a margin clerk, I'm going to call you and say, hey, where's the $40,000? And you go, who are you? I said, I'm the margin clerk. He said, why are you calling me? I don't even have a margin account. I said, no. The margin department determines whether monies or securities are due. If it's a cash account, what's due is 100% of the purchase price. And margin accounts is where the customer is going to pay part of the purchase price, and we're going to lend them the balance of the broker dealer. By the way, we love lending customers money. It's one of our all-time things to do. So absolutely. Let me just give you permission here. I think, do I have to give you ask? You have to ask, or do I can give it to you? It's not allowing me. We're having some snafus here. So I'll tell you what, I will record this, but it says to ask, did you ask for permission? I'm not seeing the ask for permission here. So let's see if it's telling me. I don't see you asking for permission on my captain's chair here. So I'll tell you what.
It says, please ask the host to give you permission to record.
Yeah, I'm looking where I can give you the permission, but it's not, I'm not seeing it on my screen is what I'm saying. So let me see. I'll tell you what, just send me an email afterwards and I'll send you the recording. How's it? Does that work?
That works. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, just send me the email and it's a commercial Zoom account. So about an hour after it processes, and I'd be more than happy to do that. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what's happening. I actually moved this from Wednesday. Maybe that has something to do with it. My dad is, having some health issues, and I thought I might have to be at Wednesday down in San Diego, but it didn't end up happening that way. Okay, so margin means money required for the transaction. Very testable. There are certain types of accounts that must be cash accounts. Chat is open. Does anybody have in the chat the type of accounts that you must pay in full, must be cash accounts? We don't extend credit. Very testable. Well, short, we're extending credit. A short account, you're using a margin account. All short sales must be conducted in a margin account. So no, margin accounts for short sales. The only short transaction you can do without opening a margin account is a covered call. The big ones on the test are UTMA accounts, Uniform Transfer to Minors Act accounts, Uniform Gift to Minors accounts, no margin. That's very testable. You got to pay in full. The other one that is testable is retirement plans or cash accounts. So, you buy 1,000 shares at 40 in your retirement plan, you got to pay in full. Now, again, marginable securities means you can use it as collateral for a loan. A lot of people like using their securities as collateral for a loan. For example, when the Clippers were up for sale, the rumors were the Clippers were going to go for about $1 billion. And Stephen Ballmer was hovering. And he said, Oprah was thinking about making a bid, and David Geffen were thinking about making a bid, and they're billionaires like me. But I decided to come in with a knockout bid. I decided what I was going to do is, instead of offering $1 billion, I'm going to offer $2 billion. And I think that will get rid of a lot of the bidders. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use my margin account. I have $60 billion in Microsoft stock. And I'm just going to ask my broker dealer to extend me a $2 billion loan against my $60 billion in Microsoft stock. And so, boy, a lot of customers like borrowing against their collateral, their securities. Now, it's not testable to know what I can lend you money to buy. Exchange listed securities, NASDAQ. What's testable is to know what I can't lend you money to buy. Yes, Megan, in a cash account, you can sell a call without a margin account. So let's just be clear on that. That's part of why we want to come to class. Somebody asked, well, why should I pay the money for the class when I can just watch the replay? I said, well, two reasons. You can't ask a question in the video. I mean, you can do it in the comment box. And secondly, I think you're more likely to be interrupted watching a video than participating in the class. But Megan, very testable to know that an opening sale is used to establish or add to a short position. And I had said, Megan, that all short positions have to be done in a margin account. So Megan, whether you want to borrow money or borrow securities from a broker dealer, you need a margin account. I then said the only time you can do an opening sale of not open a margin account is if it's an opening sale on a covered call. You're selling a call on stock you own. So Megan, that also means, Megan, that you could do covered calls in the account. You could do covered calls in your retirement plan, because again, you're not using margin to do so. So yes. Yeah. Would it be options two? I'm not sure, Cynthia, I'm understanding. Would it be options two? I'm not going to lend you money to buy options. In fact, let's just turn the slide here again, very testable. I remember there's only 3 or 4, but as I said, we don't know what 3 or 4 you're going to get, right? So we don't lend you money to buy options. That's a big one. We don't lend you money to buy new issues. It's considered a new issue 30 days from the effective date. So let's just try one there. You call me up, you say, hey, Dean, this company went public a while back, and I'd like to buy it in my margin account. I say, well, how long ago did it go public? And you say 2 weeks ago. I say, no can do. You're going to have to do it in your cash account. You say 6 weeks ago. I go, no problem. So it's considered a new issue for 30 days from what we call the effective date. Now, remember, open-end funds are continually offering new shares to the public. So that's not a separate rule. It's the same rule. I can't lend you money to buy an open-end mutual fund because Reg T just says these securities are ineligible. Remember, the Reg T, the Federal Reserve Board, says we can't lend you money. I can't lend you money to buy options. And then OTC non-NASDAQ stocks are what were formerly known as pink sheets and bulletin board stocks. And I wouldn't worry about that one as a test issue, but I would certainly worry about the new issues. I'd certainly worry about the options. Now, be careful. If you've had the new issue for more than 30 days, you buy in your cash account, you've had the open mutual fund for more than 30 days, well, then you can use it as collateral. You can use it as collateral. So, Okay, very testable. There is additional documentation required to open a margin account. Now, if you're getting the hang of it being a Series 7 test taker, what should you be aware of anytime you see there's 3 of thing? When you're studying and you see there's 3 of a thing, what kind of a question do you think they're going to ask you to do? What's the one they love? All the following except. They just love the except format. All right, so they might say all the following are required to open a margin account except. So the first thing we're going to have is the credit agreement. The credit agreement tells the customer that they're borrowing money and they're paying interest. And the interest they're paying is based on broker call. Broker call is what banks charge brokerage firms for money. And so whatever the bank is charging the brokerage firm, we're going to charge the customer broker call plus. And that is mandatory. You must sign that. The hypothecation agreement is very important because that says you understand that you're pledging your securities is collateral for the loan. And that means the securities are going to be in street name, the name of the broker dealer. And that means if you don't fulfill your responsibilities, we can sell you out. So that's very testable. Now, when you open a new account at a brokerage firm, I'm going to ask you, do you want to put your securities in street name? It'd be a lot more convenient if your securities were in the name of our broker dealer, because then we could interact with the issuer on your behalf. We can transfer stock if you sell it, pay for it if you buy it. It's just a lot more convenient. And in a cash account, that's your choice. In a margin account, I say you do not have a choice. You must have your securities and street name, the name of the broker dealer, because you don't fulfill your responsibilities, we're going to, sell you out. My brother is building an off the grid kind of a cabin thing. And he said, hey, you want to do this with me? I go, yes, sure. Why not? Anyways, these cabins that he's building, he was thinking he was going to get a loan to do it. I said, well, Chris, the way I'm understanding your off the grid thing is you're trying not to have any bills. So why would you want to borrow money and have the idea that somebody can take it from you? Why don't we just, finance these cabins as we go with cash, and then nobody can ever take it from us. I love it when I can play the older brother. I said, Chris, you can't go bankrupt if you don't owe anybody any money. So if you're out there off the grid and you don't owe anybody any money, then why would you want to, create a whole nother infrastructure you got to support? Anyways, that's what's happening here, right? With a car, you pledge the car as collateral for the loan. If you join me in Vegas and you say you want to hypothecate your Rolex, that just means you want to pledge it as collateral. And if you don't fulfill your responsibilities, we're going to sell you out, right? So that's testable. Now, another thing that happens because of this is a lot of the proxy information is coming to the broker dealer and not to the customers, right? Because if I buy the stock on my margin account and it's in street name, all the communications made from the issuer is coming to the broker dealer. Test question: can the broker dealer charge customers who have securities in street name to forward proxy materials? Can customers be charged to forward proxy material? Right on, Erica, they cannot. Now, as you know already, RTFQ, as stands for read the full question. Can the broker dealer charge issuers to forward proxy material? They can, and they do. They can, and they do. So just be careful what you're being asked about. Can a broker dealer charge customers to forward securities, or whether you're being asked, can they charge the issuer? Now, the third document, I see some of you in the chat. I love it. You guys are being active. I love that. I love that. And you nailed this test question here. The loan consent form is optional. So I say, listen, we have other customers who wish to sell securities they don't own. We have customers who like to borrow securities from the broker dealer. Would it be okay to lend them your securities? And you say, well, Dean, I don't think it's in my best interest to help people go short stock that I'm long. I say, you're correct. And that's why this document is optional. That's why this document is optional. Well, John, it just depends on the firm. Some firms will pay you interest on the credit balance, for example, or kick back some of that to you. But it's certainly something you'd want to talk to. If you're going to do margin trading, by the way, it's really important to, do more due diligence, I would say. For example, you would know what that broker call is, right? At, Robinhood is probably going to be a lot higher than it is at Interactive Brokers, for example. So, you definitely want to do your homework on that. Most broker dealers would net your debit and your credit and then, give you something, but, not testable. Or if depending how aggressive they are, Johnny, I could say, listen, Johnny, you don't do for mama, mama doesn't do for you. If you don't sign that loan consent form, then I'm not going to lend you money. So I could make the loan of the money, dependent on you signing the loan consent form. But if it's a thinly traded security, you can get paid for it. So, that's usually the answer to that. Okay, so we talked about that already. So what we're going to do is the customer is going to put up 50%. So if we buy 1,000 shares at 40, so let's just buy 1,000 shares at 40. And then remember, the question is, when you buy 1,000 shares at 40, I say as your broker, do you want to do this in your cash account, or do you want to do this in your margin account? You want to pay in full, or do you want us to lend you some money? And you say, Dean, I'd like you to loan me the money. I'd like to do it in my margin account. And I say, okay, well, if you want to do that in your margin account, we're talking $40,000 in a long market value. I think the best analogy would be a house, right? When you buy a house, the market value of the house minus the mortgage on the house equals the equity in the house. And so as a broker dealer, if you want to do this in your margin account, I'm going to lend you $20,000. And that's called your debit register, your debit balance. That's what you owe the brokerage firm. So as a margin clerk, I'm looking for you to come up with $20,000. So the margin call here is going to be for $20,000. That's going to be your Reg T margin call. Test question: how long does the customer have to come up with that $20,000? Well, Erica, don't front run. Right now I'm talking about Reg T, and then I'll be talking about Reg U. Right? So I am going to talk about it. It's on the slide. That means I'm going to talk about it. P.S. I would also tell you, I'm only going to talk about it, Erica, because I know you're using past perfect. I'm joking, but not really. You know, I had a guy at Merrill Lynch, and I like it when test takers will listen to me, and he kept sending me questions. Again, you're welcome to do that. You know, Erica's good and help me how to say things to people. But one of the challenges I have, Erica, is that people haven't paid for anything. You know, there's a lot of viewers on a YouTube channel, and they'll be, you know, asking me to do things for them. I try, but it's, you know, it can be an issue. I'm trying to save a tactful way to say, well, listen, in the queue that I have of people to help, you know, the people that are more important are the people who have attended the class, right? So anyways, this guy had worked hard and he's getting all great scores and he's using past perfect. And, you know, and he kept sending me these obtuse margin questions. Well, I didn't mind helping him. I finally said, listen, I don't think you're at risk. I mean, it's okay. I mean, you know, but your time would be spent better elsewhere. So I would just tell you that Reg U thing, I'm going to discuss it, but it's more, I told you this lecture is mainly to help you perhaps with your test prep vendor, because they may go into a lot more than we need. So somebody said, let's see, Megan says 2 days after settlement, and she is correct. So that's going to be T plus 2 plus 2. So I can't bother Megan until T plus 2 plus 2 has come and gone. At that point, I reach out to Megan. I say, hey, Megan, where is your $20,000? You know, T plus 2 plus 2 has come and gone. And now if Megan's a good customer and good standing, I'm going to get her an extension. And, you know, I get her an extension, but at some point, if she doesn't pay, I'm going to sell her out. So she's bought this 1,000 shares at 40. She hasn't paid for it. You know, by the time I get a couple extensions, this could go on, you know, for quite a while. And now let's say the stock is 50 and I sell her out. So now Megan has bought 1,000 shares at 40. She sold 1,000 shares at 50, the shares, the BFD. There's a $10,000 profit in there, and she's never paid for the original purchase. So what do we call that? Test question: when a customer buys and sells without paying for the buy. So she never came up with this $20,000. What do we call that? Johnny, it's not T plus 2. It's T plus 2 plus 2. It's 4. T plus 2 is between broker dealers. So I have 2 days to settle, but the customer gets 2 additional days. Welcome to the fiasco at GameStop with Robinhood, right? Robinhood was on the hook for billions of dollars of GameStop stock that their customers had bought and not paid for. Because remember, the customers of Robinhood don't have to pay until T plus 2 plus 2. But the broker dealer that sold the GameStop says, hey, Robinhood, where is the money, right? So yeah, it ends up, Johnny, being indeed T plus 4, right? That's what that ends up being. It's not front running, Megan. Close, you're close. It's called free riding. You know, the you know, I like doing these kind of things with you guys because, you know, I don't write as much content as I used to. I'm getting kind of lazy. There are some of my things, but what I love, Megan, is that would be such a great distractor for this question, right? I put A, free riding, B, front running, and I bet I could get a lot of people to go for front running. By the way, the distractors are wrong answers, but a lot of the distractors are right answers to different questions. So Megan, front running is when I'm trading ahead of a customer. That's testable as well. So yeah, it is, Megan, it is like learning a foreign language. So, well, you know what they say, when you dream the foreign language, that's when you know it. So I guess when you have your first, you know, Series 7 dream, woohoo, and then you're on the way. So that's called free riding. So I say, hey, Megan, you free rider, you. So, you know, do I have to send her the 10,000, by the way? I have to send her the 10,000. But what do we do to free riders? Test question. So customer buys and sells, never pays for the buy. What do we do to their account? Right on. We freeze the account for 90 days. Now be careful. We freeze the account for 90 days. And what is frozen? What is frozen? Can Megan still trade with me, or? Well, no. She can still buy and sell. It's not her trading privileges. It's her credit. So for the next 90 days, Megan, I want your money or securities up front. So when we freeze an account, that doesn't mean they can't trade. It just means they have no credit privileges. Now, I know that Megan is a customer in good standing and that she's going to come up with her margin call. And her margin call in the example we're working is $20,000. And she deposits that. And this is what we call the initial setup. And one of the most important things that we need to know is the classical margin equation. The classical margin equation is long market value minus debit equals equity. And the reason that is so important is because we have to be able, as a test taker, to do what's called the initial setup. And then we got to be able to do what's called a mark to market. So, what I mean by that, let me just get this up here for you. That's called our initial setup. And then what they like to do on the test is they like to give you these time clock questions like several weeks later, the stock is at. And so what we're kind of heading towards, we're not there yet because we got to take care of Reg U, but we also have to be able to do what's called a mark to market based on this thing. And we can't do the setup or the mark unless we know the classical margin equation. And so that's going to be very important. I'm going to show that. We're going to go through the history of this account. So we're going to take Megan up. She's going to buy the stock. It's going to go up. She's going to have great fun. She's going to get some SMA, some buying power, and then we're going to blow her up, right? It's going to go down and, she's going to lose some money. That's kind of where we're heading. All right. So you had asked Erica about Reg U, and now let's talk about Reg U. So Reg U, here's Reg U. I don't think this is testable. But here's the guy who bought 1,000 shares at 40. So remember, what I'm going to do is take the securities to the bank. So Gamma Global was my broker dealer. Gamma Global Investments was my broker dealer. Here's my customer. He bought 1,000 shares at 40. As you can see, I'm going to lend him the $20,000. So I don't think you need to do this at all on the test. But Reg U says that what I got to give to Mr. Banker is 140% of the debit balance. That's what Mr. Banker wants in collateral. So when I do that here, Erica, I say, okay, you're not going to have to do this on the test. But that being said, that's Reg U, and I'm going to take $28,000 to the bank. I'm saying, Mr. Banker, here's $28,000 worth of these securities. And as you see, that is 700 shares. So I say, Mr. Banker, here is 700 shares of my customer's securities. And I would like a loan for my customer. So first major thing, it is totally copacetic to use customer securities to lend customers money. There's nothing going on here that's not copacetic. Now, remember, that means that I have 300 shares that aren't at Mr. Banker's. Right? He bought 1,000. I took 700 to Mr. Banker. And then I'm going to loan him money at Broker Call Plus, way beyond the Series 7. If you join me someday for a 24, we go way more in depth than this, but I'm going to have to make adjustments based on the stock going up or down in terms of the collateral I have at the bank, way beyond the 7. The biggest takeaway is you can't use customer securities to support broker dealer indebtedness. Let me say that again. I cannot use the customer securities to support broker dealer indebtedness, my loans, the broker dealer's loan. Can I use customer securities to support customer indebtedness? I certainly can, right? That's what I'm doing here. I'm using this customer securities to support his indebtedness, his loan. Not a problem, not a problem. Well, yeah, the initial transaction, because that's where we're going to the bank, Megan, right? So our initial transaction is what is governing this, because remember, that's where we're at. You just bought 1,000 shares. Here's our 1,000 shares. What? Did it get rid of all my good stuff? Hold on. There we go. Right. So there was your initial transaction. And so what I did, Megan, is I took 140% of this debit balance. And that was 28,000. So yes. And then remember I said, yeah, Johnny, it's not on the 7, but the test prep vendors have it in their material. So I have a podcast on Spotify and on the YouTube channel, Johnny. And my first episode was how I am so aggravated with test prep vendors who have stuff in their content that isn't going to be tested. But as I told you, Johnny, a lot of test prep vendors have this in there. And so I want to show it to you because that is part of the margin lecture, particularly. If this was some other lecture, I wouldn't be interested in showing you that, but God knows I want you to be able to get past the locked learning, I think it's called, where there's some firms, Johnny, where they won't let the person move on to unit 20 until they did unit 19. And it could be a hellacious margin unit. So no. And I told you I was proud of that Merrill Lynch guy because he didn't spend more time on it than was necessary. But there we go. That's what that looks like. All right. So onward where we go. So we did our initial setup. as we said, we got to do our initial setup, and our initial setup was $40,000 in long market value. And so let's put that there. This is called the initial setup. And to do the initial setup, you got to know the classical margin equation, right? And then we said we're going to loan the customer $20,000. So I said, Megan, I'm going to lend you $20,000 to buy these securities. And that's called the debit register or debit balance. That's what you owe the brokerage firm. And as you recall, she put up $20,000. Not testable, but this is called perfectly balanced. How often do you think margin accounts are perfectly balanced? How often do you think margin accounts are perfectly balanced at 50%? Well, day one, right? Day one. Day one is when they're perfectly balanced, right? Okay, now remember what I said, after we do the initial setup, we're going to have to do a mark to market. We're going to have to do a mark to market. So let's put this in test phraseology. Your customer buys 1,000 shares at 40 and makes the required deposit. With the stock at 50, which of the following is true? So now we got to do our mark to market at 50, right? So let's put that there. Now we're going to do, it's called a mark to market based on this move. Okay, so we're going to do, again, we're doing our classic margin equation to do the mark. And we said we got to know the classical margin equation. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do the marks. And the classical margin equation is long market value minus debit register, debit balance equals equity. So that's what we're going to have to do the mark. Okay, so what is the new long market value based on this move to 50? What is the new long market value? Yeah, $50,000, right? And again, I think the best analogy is the house, right? If the market value of my house goes up, my mortgage remains the same. So you still owe the brokerage firm $20,000. That doesn't change. And what you have here is that equity buildup, right? You got some equity buildup here because the stock is going the right way. So now we're doing our mark. And equity always represents what you would have if you sold the stock. Nobody's suggesting you sell the stock, but that's what equity represents. It's kind of like if I sell my house and I pay off the mortgage, that's what it looks like, right? That's what it looks like. I walk with the equity. When I came out to Nevada, I sold all my stuff in California and my house, paid off the mortgage, and off to Las Vegas I go. So if you sold this right now, this would be pretty cool, right? Megan put up $20,000. The stock is now 50. And if she calls me and sells and pays off the loan, she walks with 30. She's made $10,000. Pay attention. Had Megan done this in her cash account, had she bought 1,000 shares at 40, it went to 50, and she sold, she would have made $10,000 as well. So whether she did this in her cash account, paid in full, or she did in a margin account, paid part of the purchase price, she made $10,000. So does anybody know the difference between the two? So what's the difference between doing this in your cash account and putting up 40 and making 10, and doing this in your margin account and putting up 20 and making 10? That is called leverage. Leverage, making a little money do a lot. So if she did this in her cash account, she would have made 25%. 10,000 divided by 40,000. Here she made 50%. Woohoo! She's making money twice as fast. Now I should warn her, the same supercharged speed she makes money with is the same supercharged speed she's going to lose money with. So now I call you and I say, hey, Megan, for customers like you that buy stocks that go the right direction, I'm willing to advance you a further loan. Reg T says, Megan, that I can loan you up to 50% of the market value. I can loan you up to 50% of $50,000. I can loan you $25,000. Another way to say it, Megan, is you only need to be at risk for 25,000 and you're at risk for 30,000. Again, the analogy is a house, right? You know, Megan, when you have a house and you have excess equity, the bank is willing to advance you a further loan. And so I say, you have $5,000 in excess equity, more equity than you need. And I'm recommending to you that you buy some more stock. And she says, well, Dean, I like the stock at 40. I like the stock at 40, but it's a little rich at 50. I think, I think I'm going to take a pass at 50. I don't think I'm going to increase my proportion ownership at 50. But what if I don't do it today? Can I use it later? I say, yeah, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a special memorandum to your account today. I'm going to create a holding tank, Megan, for your excess equity. I'm going to make a special memorandum to your account that on today, you had $5,000 more than you needed. And you can have that later on as cash, or you can have that to buy additional securities. My favorite would be buy additional securities. And so you can have $5,000 in cash, or you can buy $10,000 worth of securities. I'm going to show you both of these. But this could have been a mark to market, right? As we said, test phraseology, your customer buys 1,000 shares at 40 and makes the required deposit. With the stock at 50, which of the following is true? And then you'd have to tell me, that the equity is 30, or they could say what remains unchanged, and you tell me the debit balance. So again, you got to be able to do the initial setup and the mark. Now, the reason we made that special memorandum is to create the holding tank. I'm going to show that to you in just a moment. I wouldn't worry too much about it as a test taker. If you thought of excess equity and SMA as one and the same, I don't think that would be a problem. But, it's not really. I'm going to show you how not really in just a minute. We can get rid of this, Megan. We can get rid of this because this is yesterday's news. Customers get confused about this all the time. Every day is a new day. And remember, when we do a mark again, this is going to go bye-bye. And so what's going to remain is the SMA that I made, the special memorandum that I made to your account. So she told me she liked it at 50 or 40, but she didn't like it at 50. So let's now say the stock goes to 40. Again, the key to what I'm doing here is you got to know the classical margin equation. You got to know how to do the mark and figure this out, right? So now let's say the stock goes to 40. We're going to do the mark again at 40. So here we go with the mark. Every day is a new day. So what is the new market value if now it's trading at 40? Now it's going to be $40,000. She still owes the brokerage firm $20,000. She has $20,000 in equity. And, I call her and I say, hey, Megan, you remember you told you like it at 40, and guess what? It's back at 40. How do you feel about increasing your proportionate ownership today at 40? And she goes, damn, Dean, I don't have any excess equity. I know you don't. You're correct. You do not have any excess equity, but aren't you glad that I made a special memorandum to your account? Because you still have access to that SMA as cash, or you can buy that, use that to buy additional securities. So that was the whole reason that I did that mark. So that's 0. But now we still have this. We're going to bring this over as a margin clerk. She still has $5,000 in cash, and she can still buy $10,000 in securities. Yeah, the SMA never goes away. I love it, Megan. It only goes away if you use it. The way it disappears, if you use it, you lose it. We're going to use it right now. So Megan, your choice. Do you want to buy some additional securities, or do you want cash? So there's 2 scenarios here. One is Megan calls me because she said, well, I call her. Remember, I'm trying to sell her that $40 more stock. And She goes, well, Dean, it's kind of embarrassing, but I don't think I should be actually using my SMA as buying power because right now I'm having a little bit of a liquidity crisis and, I need some money. I said, well, how much money do you need? She goes, well, why? I said, well, remember, I'll send you 5,000 if you like, Megan, no problem. More than happy to send you 5,000. Would that be helpful? Or she can have her SMA as cash. That would be the cash thing. I'm going to show you both. Or she could say, I want to buy additional securities. So what do you want to do, Megan? You want the cash or do you want to buy additional securities? Cash or securities? Or she wants the cash. Okay, so here we go. So now let's just make a note so we know what we're doing here. We're going to send her the cash. She's using her SMA as cash. Now remember, it's kind of like the house again. The only way Megan gets her own money out of this account is to sell securities. So any other way she draws money out of this thing, it's a function of borrowing, right? So I'm showing her using her SMA as cash. We said the most important thing for us is to know the classical margin equation. The classical margin equation. So she still has $40,000 in securities, long market value. Now pay attention. Now she's going to owe us $25,000. The 20 we lent her to buy the stock, plus the 5 I'm sending her now. So now she owes us $25,000. The $20,000 we lent her to buy the stock, and the $5,000 here. She's drawn down on her equity. Again, it's like your house. If you write an excess equity line of credit check on your house, the mortgage goes up and the equity goes down. And again, we said what we can ask you is what is the effect on these ledger entries, right? And now we say, her equity has gone down by the amount of that loan. And we always want to see if perhaps we can't loan her more money. Pay attention. There's no such thing as negative excess. There's no such thing as negative excess. She's below 50%. It's not a problem. Nobody's going to bother her. She's never going to find out this is a problem unless. And I'm going to show you the unless in just a minute. But there's no such thing as negative excess. She's just below 50%. So what happens when she's below 50%? Nothing. Nothing happens when she's below 50%, unless if Megan calls me here and says, Dean, sell securities, still nothing happens. If she just tells me to sell securities, I'm a margin clerk, I'm going to pay down her loan. So there's no conversation there. I say, oh, aye, and I sell the securities. If she says, Dean, sell the securities and send me a check, I said, well, Megan, we need to have a conversation. And she goes, well, gee, this is kind of scary. I said, yeah, we only have to have this conversation because you just asked for a check and presently your account is restricted. She goes, well, why didn't you mention it sooner? I said, because it didn't matter until you said you wanted a check. So when account is restricted, that means less than 50% equity. Now, please note, she put herself below 50 and I had no problem with her putting herself below 50. So now that she's restricted, what is the new rule for her? I say, when you're below 50%, Megan, and you sell securities and ask for a check, you can only have half. So if she sells $4,000 worth of securities, I'd pay down the loan and there'd be no conversation. But if she sells 4,000 and she asks for a check, I say, I can only send you half. You have to use the other half to pay down the loan. So, another way to think about it is she's restricted and she can only have 50% of the sales proceeds. Or another way to say that is there's a retention requirement. So when the account is below 50%, it is restricted. And that means they can only withdraw 50% of the sales proceeds. Now, if she doesn't, she's, well, Dean, now they bring it up. Boy, this is, I'm a little more concerned. And I say, well, gee, Megan, she goes, I'm thinking if I don't get it now, I can't get it later. I said, no. If you leave the entire $4,000 in there, I'll just use it to pay down the loan. I'll credit your SMA for the half you could have got. Kind of a neat trick, right? I'm trading her real money for fake money. So that's what happens. So the money here, if you're going to sell the 4,000, I'm going to pay down the loan. So let's just do that. Right. So if you leave that all in there to pay down the loan, that goes to 21. Right, because that's $4,000 that you sold. Right, so that's now 21,000. I do the mark again. And if she only takes 2, then I only have $2,000 to pay down the loan. And then the loan goes to 2,000 goes to 23. Right, so that's called the mark. I don't think you're gonna have to do that many marks, but again, the key is doing the marks, Okay, so we've taken her, by the way, she said, oh, it used to be a $50 stock. I go, yeah, it did, but that was long ago in a far off galaxy. That day is done, right? Every day is a new day. This is done. You know, we're always doing the mark and bringing the account forward based on today. So at the end of every day, we mark to market. Now, one of the reasons this is not a big deal on your test is we have margin departments and we have computers that are very good at this. So at the very end of the day, the computers are going to take everybody's margin account and do the mark and figure out where they're at in terms of this. Yeah, if you don't want the cash, we pay down the loan. Okay, so let's go through the life history of the account. So far, she was above 50, and when she was above 50, she had excess equity that she could use to increase the position, or she could have it as cash. We said she didn't have to do it today. I mentioned I don't think on the test you're going to have to do excess equity and SMA as separate things, but they really are. But I don't think it will cause you any problems on your exam. She says, well, Dean, this is great fun. I'm having a good time, but how far down could my account go before there'd be a problem? I said, well, Megan, why are you sending out negative vibes like that? I say at all times to maintain your account, you need 25% of the long market value in equity. You know, house requirements, Megan, can always be more stringent. I don't know of any broker dealer has minimum maintenance of $20,000 or 25%. So the house requirements can always be more stringent. They just can't be more lenient. Now pay attention. Megan says, Dean, I didn't ask you what is maintenance on the account. That's not what I asked you. I asked you how far down could my account go before there would be a problem, right? So what I told her is I said, well, right now, Megan, you don't have a problem because 10 to 25% of 40 is 10 and you have 20. So right now you don't have a problem. And she said, that's not what I asked you. I asked you how far down my account could go before there would be a problem. And you're correct, Cynthia. The way we do that is we take the debit register, what you owe the brokerage firm, and we divide by 0.75. And let me just go through my slides here real quick. So, sorry. We went through the life history of the account. I showed you that. And I said the SMA, I showed your SMA as a line of credit. We said it's increased by the stock going up. Now, Megan doesn't get a new entry until she gets past her high water mark. So in our example, we took her to 50 and back to 40, and she wouldn't get a new mark until she goes to past 50. So you're not going to get new SMA bouncing around. We said when she has excess equity, she can buy stock without making a required deposit. She did that. And then we said she put herself below 50, not a problem. She used her buying power to put herself in restriction, or she got cash, excuse me. Either situation would put her below 50. And we said, it's not a problem. We said, the only new rule is if you're below 50, you can only have half of the money. And if she doesn't take all the money, we credit her SMA. Now, this is more of a test prep vendor again trick. It's not really a test question, but sometimes people get so aggravated because they think they got margin down and they do the mark and they go, how did I miss this thing? And the only time I'm ever making a direct entry into SMA as a margin clerk is in that scenario. The only time Megan's going to get an SMA entry that's me actually making an entry into her account is in that restricted account where she doesn't take the sales. You know, other than that, it's going to be, you know, a mark to market situation. And then we said, if I'm a margin clerk, I always pay down the loan. So when you're doing your setups and your initial setups and marks, and they have in your question that somebody sent in some money or they had some dividends, if you owe your broker dealer money and money comes into that account, we're going to use it to pay down your loan. We said, what could she do with it? She could have it as cash. She could buy additional securities. And remember her point, my point, the only way it goes bye-bye is if you use it. If you use it, you lose it. You use it, you lose it. Here's again, a mark to mark on a restricted account below 50. And we said, if you're below 50, it's restricted. The restriction is you can only have half the proceeds, right? So that's what that is. Boom, boom, boom. And now we're talking about maintenance. And we said we want to figure out how far down her account could go before there would be a problem. And very testable, the way we do that is market value, the market value maintenance is the debit by 0.75. So here's her account. So Megan, you owe us $20,000. And when I take the 20,000 test question, I'll say, customer has the margin account with the following ledger entries. Long market value of 40, debit of 20. What is market value at equity maintenance? So here we do it, and then boy, ooh, sign of the devil, 26,666. So I'm about to mark Megan to market at 24. I'm about to mark her to market at 24. Do we know there's going to be a problem if I mark her to market at 24? If I say in this question that the market value is now $24,000, is there going to be a problem? Yeah, I mean, that's why this is helpful, right? If I mark her to market at 30, there's no problem. So what's really nice about this formula is now as a margin clerk, I can say, okay, well, I know if she's over here, like if I say the market value is 30, I know there's not a problem, right? Because that's above that market value maintenance. And I know if it's like 24, then I know there's a problem. So that's why that's very helpful. All right, so let's do the mark to market at 24 and walk our friend Megan through this. Well, we're going to walk her through this thing. And we know she's got a problem. We know she's got a problem because, that's below 26,666. So I say, hey, Megan, we're only holding $24,000 in collateral. No, you don't have access, Johnny. So good question. So Johnny, if Megan goes from 40 to 50, doesn't use her SMA as cash or buying power, and now we're at 24, and she says, using my SMA, I go, no. Your charging privileges are suspended, right? So, and you couldn't use it, Johnny, your point, to put yourself below maintenance, right? So sometimes customers get confused about this and they're like, oh, it's like trying to use your Visa check to pay your Visa bill. That wouldn't work, right? So yeah. So by the way, she says, Dean, you never called that collateral before. I said, well, I never called it collateral before because I used to be your broker, but now I'm your banker. And I'm a little concerned that I have a loan to you that is only collateralized. My loan to you of 20,000 is only collateralized by, $24,000 in securities. And so now you only have $4,000 in equity. And to maintain your account, she goes, well, Dean, it sounds like you're threatening me. I said, I'm not threatening you. I will not maintain your account unless you have 25% of the market value in equity. So right now, the minimum maintenance on the account is 6,000. Now be careful. That's minimum. She has some of that already though, doesn't she not? I mean, of that 6,000 she needs to maintain this account, she has some of it already. How much of that does she already have? So that's your minimum maintenance, and she's got 4, right? So there's the maintenance on the account, and she's got to have 6. And of the 6 she needs, she's got 4. And be careful. She has not a margin call, not a margin call. That's not what she has. What she has is a maintenance call. Those are entirely different things. So I say, the reason I'm calling you is I need $2,000 from you. Oh, she goes, oh, Dean, no problem. T plus 2 plus 2. I go, no. I don't know where you're coming up with T plus 2 plus 2. That's a margin call. That's a call for initial money. This is not, Megan, a call for initial money. This is a call to maintain your account. Test question. Maintenance calls are due promptly. Maintenance calls are due promptly. I'm never going to tell her what that means, because I'm going to say, sorry, that wasn't prompt enough, and I'm going to sell her out. So If she sends me the 2,000, what am I going to do with it? So she sends me the 2,000 because I've been asking me, what do we do with the money? So what do we do with that 2,000? We pay down the loan, right? So we pay down the loan now gets paid down. And now she's right back at maintenance. I'll call her again tomorrow. I'm joking, but not really. You know, stocks are going down, continue to go down, right? What happens if she doesn't come up with the $2,000 promptly? What happens if she doesn't come up with this $2,000 promptly? Not a freeze this time, Erica. I joke. I say, listen, there might be, Megan, 50 ways to leave a lover, but there's only 3 ways to meet a maintenance call. Only 3. The easiest way to take care of this is to give me cash. She goes, well, I don't have any cash. I go, can you deposit some additional collateral? She says, I have a Rolex. I go, no, I don't want a Rolex. What kind of additional collateral do I want from her? What kind of additional collateral? Yeah, there you go. I want marginable security. So she says, Dean, I have a new issue that I bought at my other broker a while back. I go, how while back, Megan, do we talking here? She goes, 2 months ago. I go, oh, cool, bring it on down. That'll work. She goes, Dean, I have a open-end mutual fund I've been dollar cost averaging in for decades. I go, bring it on down. Right. So that's got to be marginable securities. If not, I'm going to liquidate her. I'm going to liquidate and pay down the loan. So that is the life history of a margin account, long account. What is the other type of account you can have besides a long account? What are the 2 stock positions that you can have at a brokerage firm? You can have a long account. There's by the way, what we just showed her account going up and down. Remember, house requirements can be more stringent. And the other account we can have is a short account. And we said all short sales must be conducted in a margin account. We said the only exception to that is you can short a call on stock you own without a margin account. And where most people get hung up on here is the classical short equation. So the biggest takeaway from our evening class today, or this evening, is to make sure you know the classical margin equation. Classical means everybody knows it. You remember why I'm telling you these formulas are so important? These equations, why are the equations important to us as a test taker as it relates to margin on Series 7? Because we always have to be able to do what? We have to be able to do the initial setup, right? And then we got to be able to do the mark, right? So it's a 2-step process. And it's like options. Options are very much the same way. You got to be able to do the setup, and then you got to do the mark, based on whatever the question says. Yeah, I would certainly add it to, if you're doing a data dump sheet, I would certainly have it on mine. Everybody's dump sheet would be a little different. By the way, I would tell you, Cynthia, I might even add a account that I owned intellectually. What I mean by that is, I told you were going to put that on your dump sheet. Why don't you make up an easy margin account and put it there, like next to the formula, put 40 minus 20 equals 20, right? I mean, that way, when you can kind of, if you get the numbers, you can, use the numbers on the exam to inform you and messing around with that, right? So I'm suggesting not only might you want to put it on your data dump sheet, you might want to actually annotate it a little further with a working model, so to speak. I'm a big believer in options too, maybe having working models. A working model is something you say, I'm going to be an expert on, options as it relates to, Apple, for example. And then if you get good at that, then you can kind of interpolate from that. So, all right. So this is a classical margin equation. Now, where most people get hung up here, pay attention, is where is this credit balance coming from, this cash? So the customer says, Dean, I want to sell short 1,000 shares of this stock at 32. Okay, first test question, we have a locate requirement. We're not going to let you sell short the stock unless we have somebody who signed the loan consent form, right? So I said, let me see if we can borrow it from you. And so I always say, oh, hey, good news, I was able to borrow it. And so we're selling short, selling securities we don't own, and we get 32 grand from selling the stock. But remember, you have to put half Reg T with that. And so for our initial setup here, we're going to have $48,000 in the credit register. And that's where most people get hung up. Where did that come from? Well, 32,000 came from selling the stock we didn't own. And then 16 came from the 50% Reg T call. And so again, what you owe here now, the second ledger line is still what you owe. But what you owe are securities. You don't owe money, you owe securities. And the securities you owe are presently valued at 32,000. That's called the short market value. So in a long account, what you owe is money. And in a short account, what you owe are securities, right? And this is our classical margin equation short. And that is really important for us to be able to do the setup. And so this is the setup for this account. And that's what that setup looks like. And again, we said the biggest thing for us is to know the classical margin equations, long and short. Right. So that's what we need to kind of have a takeaway. So now that we have our initial setup, what do we have to be able to do next? So let's do test phraseology. Customer sells short 1,000 shares at 32, makes the required deposit. So we do our setup. So now what are we going to have to do? A mark to market. A mark to market. Now, before we do the mark to market, just remember, if you're short, you want this thing to go down, right? So this is a bearish thing. So if I mark to market and it goes down, that's going to be good news. And if it goes up, that's going to be bad news. We're going to do the same thing again. What I mean by we're going to do the same thing is we're going to look at it going up, the customer being a happy camper, everything's going according to plan. And then we're going to look at it going the wrong way. All right, so now we're going to do a mark. And let's say the stock goes to, it was 32. And let's say now it's $25 a share. So if it was 32 and now it's 25, are we happy or are we sad? If we shorted it at 32 and now it's 25, are we happy or are we sad? Yeah, we're happy. And what are we going to do now? So what is Dean about to do with the stock at 25? I'm going to do a mark to market. A mark to market. If I wanted, your point, I could buy it back if I wanted to. Right? If I sell it short at 32 and buy it back at 25, I'm going to make some money. But remember, I might want to let it ride. So, and so now I'm going to do the mark. So you still have $48,000 in credit register. Please note, this is not a free credit balance. This is not a free credit balance. I mean, it's not as cash laying around in your account. It's cash that came from selling the stock short. And then now we owe securities. At your point, Megan, if we bought back the securities, gave it back to the person we borrowed it from, we would have more money left over. So far we're doing pretty good. And that's going to be our mark. And then remember, they could ask us, what happened to the equity? And you tell me the equity went up. What happened to credit register? Nothing. Now I am mathematically challenged, so I'm not being facetious. You make fun of me if you want. I'm not going to do that in my head. I'm going to take 48,000 on my calculator and I'm going to minus 25,000. And I get $23,000 as equity. Because God knows, because they could ask me, what's the equity based on the mark? And, God, you don't want to miss questions because of arithmetic. That's, I'm terrible at arithmetic. So, I don't want to be missing questions because I can't do math. Yeah, we were doing a live stream. I don't know if we, I come into your life for a reason and a season. So, the reason is to pass your exams and the season is how long that takes you to do that. So, there's always kind of a churn of people that we're involved in helping. And, I always think it's funny because somebody will say, Dean, I'm unsubscribing to your channel because I have accomplished my, my matriculation. I'm done with my testing journey. I go, okay, cool. If I'm gonna lose subscribers, that's cool. But anyways, we had a guy in our live stream and I was saying that, I can't do math very well. And then, I was joking that, you don't really have to do math great to do well in our business. But, if it's really important math, we can pay somebody to do it for us. And anyways, he just went off on me because you shouldn't be in this business if you can't do math. I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, gee, I felt like telling him, listen, I have been blessed enough to know several billionaires and some of them are mathematically challenged. So, anyways, now remember what I want to do here is I want to see if I can withdraw some cash without closing out the position, Megan. So maybe I do want to get some cash. Maybe I want to sell short some additional securities. So be careful here. The short accounts are kind of the ones that give people a problem. So we got to kind of be a little careful here, because remember the ledger entry, what I mean by that, let me just get my thing here. The market value is on that line. So we're going to have to be a little careful here when we do our mark on a short account. So, I know that makes you feel better when I tell you that that's where most people get hung up. As I joke though, I mean, I get more worried about somebody who, is messed up in some way I've never seen them. So we got to be careful here. So half of the 25 is 12.5, right? That's the Reg T requirement. And remember, it's just in a different spot when we're doing these short positions. So that's Reg T. So let's label that. And so, hey, good news. Good news. We have excess equity. We have more than we need. So we have 23,000 and we only need to have 12.5. And so we have 10,500 in excess equity. Excess equity. Johnny's question is the Reg T the same Reg T as T plus 4? Well, I'm not sure, Johnny, if I understand the question. Reg T is always, even a cash account, if that's what you're asking, yes. Whether it's a cash account or a margin account, the customer has 2 additional days to come up with monies and securities. Let's see, Megan, I see you want to try to pick up a couple more points. I'm not sure did I miss something about the points you're trying to pick up? I would tell you, listen, let me just give you listen, that's part of my thing. Part of my gig is I tell stories. So sometimes I get people on the channel say, hey, I like your stories. And other people say, I hate your stories. I'm like, well, good news. There's other channels. Anyways, I used to really be somebody who said you need to know 100% of this stuff with 100% accuracy. And then when my brother came to work for me and I told him the weighting, I told him how many margin questions are. In those days, it was in a loose leaf binder kind of thing, a 3-ring binder. He literally started taking entire units and chapters out of the test, out of the book, and tossing them in the trash. And he said, Dean, is this 72% of the material? By the way, the book went, I said, well, yeah. He said, I'm just going to learn this with 100% accuracy. I'm like, oh my goodness. He passed. I went to write Finra and say there's, to this day, things he's clueless about. Product knowledge comes from sales service, not taking the test. And so now I'm more of like, you need to get the 72, however you get it. So, there's no extra points for, getting 100. In fact, I even joke when we gave scores, and I'm not really joking, I would be more worried about somebody who got a 90. And I would tell you, I say, if you get a 90 on this thing, I think I should fire you now for a couple reasons. One, that means you're smarter than me, and how am I going to supervise you? And two, it proves that you're a bigger jerk as the person who wrote the test. So I'm not sure I want to have you around, right? So, all right. So you have 10,500 in excess. You can have that as cash, or you can use it to sell securities. Do you have to do anything today? Do you have to do anything today? Are you going to lose access to that 10,500 if you don't do something with it today? Either use it as cash or use it to sell short securities. Is anything going to happen to you? No, because what I'm going to do is, what am I going to do for you to make sure you don't lose access to it? I'm going to make a special memorandum to your account. I'm going to create a holding tank for your excess equity. Now, again, I don't think, ladies and gentlemen, on the test, this would cause you any problem to think of those as the same thing. They're not really, but it wouldn't cause you any miss. And then remember, 2 times your SMA is always either your buying power, or in this case, your selling power. And again, 10,500 times 2. I'm using my calculator. I'm just, telling you that I'm practicing what I preach here. Yeah, it is embarrassing, but hey. Back in the days, they gave scores. I had, over the years, I've taken the test a couple times, and when it was scored, the last time I took it, it was still scored, and I missed 4 questions. And to be honest with you, I would petition the 4 questions if I really, knew which ones they were. And I thought maybe they're judgment questions. And I was teaching, I think it was options, and I had a break even. And I had it was 100 plus 5, and I had it as 108. And I go, I bet the 4 questions, which were probably just stupid arithmetic, and I didn't do it correctly. Okay, so that's all good news. All good news. And by the way, the test is usually about the bad news. So here it's good news if the stock goes down. So it's going to be bad news if the stock goes up. And you say, Dean, how far up could the stock go before I would have a problem? How far up could the stock go before I would have a problem? So I say, let's just go back here to our mark. And I say, you will have to have 30% of the market value as equity. 30% of the market value is equity. That's very testable, by the way. And then you respond again by saying, Dean, I didn't ask you what is maintenance on the account. I asked you how far up the account could go before I would have a problem. I say, oh, I know how to do that, right? The way we do that is we take the credit register, $48,000, as you see here. That's the account we're just looking at. And we divide by 1.3 and test question, we come up with market value at maintenance. So again, the reason that's helpful is because I know if the stock goes to 40, it's going to be a problem, right? Because that's above 36,923, right? And I know if the stock goes to 35, it's not going to be a problem, right? So that's why that's kind of a helpful thing to have in mind. By the way, in terms of risk mitigation, what is a couple things, a couple of arrows in your quiver you might want to consider doing here if you shorted the stock at 32? Now, if I come into your branch at your office and say, I want to lose so much money that you in advance can't tell me how much, what might you consider doing if you're going to sell short? One thing you might want to consider doing is entering a buy stop to stop the loss. And this formula is also helpful because, if Dean is thinking about entering a buy stop on this thing, where would I enter my buy stop? I might want to put my buy stop somewhere below maintenance, right? So I get blown out of this position before I encounter a maintenance call. So maybe I put in my buy stop at 35, for example, as a risk mitigation strategy. So that way, I don't have to confront this idea of the stock having a maintenance call. So that's one risk mitigation strategy for a short sale, is put in a buy stop. Here I'm saying I'm willing to lose approximately $3,000. Anybody know another risk mitigation strategy for a short sale besides that buy stop? What's another thing I might want to consider doing? Yeah, not sell a call, Erica, buy a call. So what we might want to do is buy a protective call. Right. So in this case, we maybe we buy, we go long a 35 call. So that would also, that one's actually effective edge. That works even better because now I know I can get out of that stock at 35. It no longer has unlimited risk. So those are two arrows in my quiver if I'm short the stock. And again, as I said, what's kind of helpful in what we've been looking at is this is informative about where I might want to put that buy stop, or where I might want to buy that call in terms of that price. Oh, that's right, Erica. Just, I had, when I took, and who knows, I'm ever going to teach live classes again. But, in live classes, I ask rhetorical questions. I always appreciate people participating, Erica. And this guy had questions all the time. He was wrong all the time. And, I go, and, I was tutoring a lady one time and and she go, oh, that's the rudest thing I've ever heard of. Dean, if it was technology, I'd be you all the time. Anyways, this guy, people were concerned in class. They came up and were asking about this guy. I said, no, he's going to be fine. He's getting a lot of system in class. That's what he's paying his money for. And we had one guy in the class we never heard from in the entire week. And in the, that class, we have time to do a practice final at the end. We take a practice final together. And this guy, we never heard from him the entire week. And then all of a sudden, when he got done and scored, he goes, I won't say what he said, but and I felt like saying, welcome to the class. I wish you would have shown up a little sooner and got that out of your system for sure. Okay, so there's our short. I definitely know that. Right. And if it goes above that, right, you're going to have a maintenance call due promptly. We talked about that. Some customers have mixed accounts. So remember this from grade school, you can combine like things. So if we get a mixed margin question, I think it would be I'm wishing for you a dream draw. Everything you study shows up, and then there's what I call a face of death draw. But remember, this is an asset. That's an asset. That's an asset. And then this is a liability. That's what you owe the brokerage firm, and that's what you owe the brokerage firm. And so you can combine like things, right? So you're going to do your classical margin equation long, which we said is something we need to be able to do. Long market value. Let me clean up my slide here. Minus debit equals equity, and our classical margin equation short.
No,
And then we can come up with the answer to this.
go sit down. Jaya Marie.
Okay. So now let's do our kind of a stupid but testable thing. This shows up all the time as well. So this is just stupid but testable. And this is, buying in a new margin account. So the minute you hear new margin account, initial transaction, this is very testable. It's on the SIE, it's on the Series 7, it's on the 9, it's on the 24. I don't know why. But in a new account, if you buy less than 2, you're just going to pay the purchase price. And if you buy between $2,000 and $4,000, you're going to pay $2,000. And if you go over 4, then there's no trick in play. So let me show you all the different versions of this trick and how we answer on the test. So here's the first version of the trick. The first version is they say on the test, the client buys 100 shares at 15 in the initial transaction. So new customer. He says, Dean, that's a great idea. Let's open a new account and let's buy 100 shares at 15. I know how margin accounts work. I'll send you $750. I say, well, if you had an established account with me, that would be correct. That would be correct. But this is a new account and we have a minimum of 2. He says, well, I'll send you 2. I go, no. Why would you want to send me 2 to buy $1,500 worth of stock? So less than 2, you're going to pay in full. 2 or less, you're going to pay in full. Second version of the trick. They say your customer in new margin account buys 100 shares at 30. So my customer says, Dean, sounds like a great idea. Let's open the new account. I know how it works. I'll send you $1,500. I said, well, if you had an established account with me, that would be correct, but we have a minimum of 2. So between $2,000 and $4,000, the customer is paying $2,000. So I don't know what version of this trick you're going to get, but it's there. And the last version is there is no trick in play. So the customer says, Dean, sounds like a great idea. Let's open the new account. Let's buy 100 shares at 50. I know, new account, $2,000. I go, no, half of 5 is 2,500, right? So stupid, but testable. Okay, well, that concludes our evening on margin. Is there anything else you'd like me to show you on the whiteboard? I'm more than happy to do so. The stuff I didn't show you, I didn't go too much in depth on the short because I don't think it's necessary in terms of your actual exam, but I'm more than happy to show you anything that you'd like to see before we call it a night. Can we do a debt class? I'm thinking, Eric, I'm trying to figure out, and I appreciate your input on what we could add and not add. Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that. I told you Kaplan called me. They go, what are you doing in these evening things? I go, well, it's not competitive. I'm not doing a cram course or anything. I'm just trying to see how many people are interested and Erica, what we can do off the channel. So I kind of like it too, Erica, because that would also make, we could help the SIE people as well. So if their classes, like I'm doing the next one we're doing is type of orders, Erica. I'm only charging $35 for that one. To be honest, it's not, the economics don't really matter to me. I'm just trying to, as I said, I'm doing things. I'm charging a little more for the margin because first, I told you, I don't really think it's important unless it's important to you. If you tell me you missed your mark because of margin, but I think I'm charging $35 for that type of orders class and they're capped at 10, but we can also roll out a debt. So we can certainly do a debt class. I mean, I don't see any problem with that. I just, I'm just thinking out to myself, I gotta be a little careful. As I always tell you, Eric, I gotta be careful as a one-man band that I don't commit to do many things and then I can't do them. So, I'm thinking I might need to get myself an intern or somebody to kind of help me out a little bit. Practice questions on margin. That'd be a great thing, Cynthia, to add. I don't have that presently on the channel. I have all kinds of practice questions. I got like 2,000, but I don't have actually margin questions. But we can certainly add that in the mix next time, like a PDF or something. That's a good idea as well. Unfortunately, I don't have that presently. I don't have. Is that where you asked me? Do I have a PDF with some margin questions? I do not. But I can certainly, again, I'm trying not to commit too much, but I could certainly come up with maybe 10 or 20 and try and make that available to people who come to class. Types of orders, Megan, is already on the agenda. And suitability, ooh, that'd be tough to do it in an evening because it's a pretty big topic. I mean, I'm proud of myself doing this. I do have a lecture called Suitability in 60 Minutes. And I'm worried that if I had to go that quick in a class, I don't know if that you would find that, conducive to learning. All right, anything else? Yeah, that's Megan. It's excellent. It's excellent. So if you are a Kaplan using Kaplan study materials, there is a suitability exercise in the back and it's wonderful. It's got, 3 or 4. I've used that for my lectures. I have Kaplan's permission to use content on my videos, and I have a suitability playlist, Megan, and that's what I'm using. So if you are using Past Perfect or STC or training consultants, if you go to my YouTube channel, there's a playlist called Suitability for Series 7. And that's basic. Well, there's 50 practice questions first, but then after that, it's that suitability exercise from Kaplan. Okay, thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys kind of being guinea pigs about, because like I say, it looks like these classes should be more like 90 minutes instead of 60 minutes. It seems like that's kind of what it takes us to get these modules kind of done. So a pop-up live, I don't know but again, we already doing Tuesdays and overtimes and office hours. So I'm not sure about popping up live, but something to think about. Anything else? Okay, and then this will be recorded and it'll be on the channel, but if you want your own copy, you're more than happy. I think, Erica, I'll send you a copy as soon as it processes. If anybody else wants their own copy, just email me and I'd be more than happy to send that out to you. Okay, guys, remember, inch by inch, your Series 7 is a cinch. Yard by yard, your Series 7 is hard. And I'll see you hopefully for types of orders. There's office hours open. I think, Eric, I'm seeing you tomorrow. I don't know. Do we have anybody else in this class who's in on the office hour tomorrow? It's got its max of 5, but I think Erica's in there. Anybody else going to join us? All right. I'll see you, Eric. I'll see you tomorrow in that office hour. And I'll see the rest of you hopefully Tuesday in the live stream or for another class at some point. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye.